Hi, welcome to Live Healthy Now. I'm really excited to bring you another great episode today with a topic that I think is going to help a lot of you out there. I have a guest joining me today, Brittany Scott, who's here live from the US, where she currently has snow in the middle of November. Brittany Scott is a perinatal fitness specialist, and she helps moms to take care of their bodies and to feel great. She provides personal training services in person and virtually as well. And her passion is really about educating and empowering women to understand their bodies, which I'm all about and is a big part of what I do at Life Now Coaching. So I'd just like to welcome you to the podcast, Brittany.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation because we've got a lot in common with what we do and our focus on movement and exercise support in women. So yes. I'd just like to kick off each of our podcast episodes by finding out what the guest's favourite healthy topic habit is. So yeah, what habit do you have that really impacts how you feel?
Oh man, what a good question. Well, at the risk of sounding very generic as a personal trainer, moving is like my workout in the morning is like my time. I actually only lift 3 times a week, so I'm not one of those that goes crazy. I take walks and do yoga on the other days, but if I, for an extended period of time, don't get to exercise, I notice right away like the impact that it has on both how I feel physically, but also like my mental health as well. So getting in my workouts is top priority for me.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm the same. I can really feel it when I don't move my body. And I try to have one day a week at least where my movement that day is only walking, but I do a much longer walk than what I would usually do on other days because I really feel that mental impact from not moving. So it's great that you get that too. And do you have a favourite workout type?
Oh, lifting weights for sure. I never really got into that until I was actually after college. I was in my mid-20s. I was teaching at the time, and somebody introduced that to me, and I love it. And it's something about moving really heavy things over and over that can get out like anger and frustration and all of that stuff. So I love lifting.
Yeah, me too. I think there's something in it that really helps you to build resilience by pushing through and, you know, knowing that you've achieved it, that you've got to the end, that you've accomplished it. And I've definitely got some questions for you about strength training that I think are really important for women who may be listening to understand and think about for themselves. So let's dive into what it is you do. And in the intro, I said that you support perinatal women. Now, that's a term that not everyone will be familiar with because there's lots of terms given to that period of a female's life cycle. So, do you want to explain exactly what that is and the types of people that you do work with?
Yes, of course. And actually, this was a term I wasn't familiar with until I started working in this field. So often we're most familiar with prenatal, because that's one we hear a lot during pregnancy. And then I think in the UK, and I know in Australia and New Zealand, you guys use post-natal a lot. We tend to say postpartum here in the States, but post-natal and postpartum are the same 2 words for the same thing. So when we say perinatal, that just encompasses both prenatal and postnatal. So it's both during pregnancy and after having a baby. And I always like to include that once you've had a baby, you can't go back to not having a baby, right? So I always like to say you're postpartum forever, because there's this kind of misconception that like a lot of moms I've talked to about what I do, they're like, oh, my youngest is 7, so you probably can't help me because I'm not postpartum anymore. And it's like, well, no, like if you haven't addressed like your pelvic floor concerns or things like that, like I've seen what I do help women in their 50s and 60s. So once you've had a baby, you're postpartum forever.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation as well, because I think that there's lots of different understandings, and that's because of a big lack in education. I think that's probably globally the case as well, isn't it? That some women, you know, in a lot of countries, you have like that 6 or 8 week checkup after having a baby. So people think at that point you kind of expect it to be going back to normal and everything's okay.
Yeah.
And then there's the saying of it takes 9 months to make a baby, so it takes 9 months to get your body back and you know, everything to start to go back to the original place it was in terms of, you know, your muscles and your ribs that move during pregnancy, etc. And then other medical terms reference 12 months post delivery, don't they, as well? So yeah, that's a really good way to look at it and think, if you have had and you know, a pregnancy and whatever stage you're post-pregnancy, things have changed physically for you, and there's a mental impact we know about as well, isn't there? So yeah, that's definitely really great. So yeah, I love that passion you've got for working with women who fall into this definition. Like, what was it that led you to want to support women who are going through pregnancy and post-childbirth?
Yeah. That is a great question, because I actually don't have any children, which people find like very funny that I'm in this field when I don't have any kids. But I have lots of friends who have kids. Obviously, I'm in my 30s, so most of my friends have children. And what I found is that there was a huge lack of support for them in a lot of ways, but particularly in fitness, since I was really into fitness. A lot of them didn't know like what to do, especially in pregnancy. There's a lot. I mean, there's so many. You have people telling you that you should kick up your feet and not do anything. You have people telling you that you should do whatever you want all the way through your 9 months of pregnancy. So it can be so confusing, and there's conflicting information on the internet. And so I wanted to be a place where I'm certified in this. I know what's going on in your body, and I can help you navigate that journey, remove some of the like fear and uncertainty that there is around fitness during pregnancy and the postnatal period, and really give them the confidence to feel good in their bodies, no matter what's going on in pregnancy or postpartum.
Yeah, that's brilliant, because you're right, there's also that old-fashioned perception and understanding a lot of women have, that as soon as you fall pregnant you have to take it easy, and the world's definitely changing with that. I know, you know, I had my pregnancy, my daughter's coming up to 15, so you know, 16 years ago I fell pregnant, and there was definitely a fear around working out. I'd already been exercising pre-pregnancy, so I knew that it was safe to continue exercising. But there was definitely a mental resistance to it because of, you know, worry and concern and not wanting to harm the baby, which I now know is, you know, not justified whatsoever. So, when you are working with women at the start of a pregnancy, what are the sort of, you know, worries they come to you with, and how do you work with them to support and start to build their strength up?
Yeah. Well, what you said is something I see a lot, that people think they're going to hurt the baby, or their mom told them that, or their grandma told them that, you know, or like things with running, like the baby's bouncing around in there and you're like, that's not exactly like how it works. I mean, I had a CrossFit coach tell me she told a pregnant woman to stop squatting because the CrossFit coach thought that the baby was going to come out while she was squatting. So I hear all kinds of things. But mostly I just want moms to know. I start with telling them the benefits to them as a mother, the physical benefits, the mental benefits, and then I also talk about how it benefits the baby. Because one study I like to reference, they followed women who exercised in pregnancy. They followed their babies all the way through the age of 5 after they had them. And those children were at significantly less risk for a lot of like health problems, including obesity and things like that. So it doesn't just impact you as the mom, it can really impact your child as well. So a lot of moms find that motivating, right? If they don't want to do it for themselves necessarily, they definitely want their child to have a good, healthy head start if they can. So that's usually what I start with, telling them the benefits of those different things, finding out what they like to do, because not everyone likes to lift, not everyone likes to swim, not everyone likes to CrossFit. So I try to find out what they like and incorporate that into their fitness journey so that it's not something they hate, so that it can become something that they really enjoy and look forward to.
Yeah. And there's something I always remember being said to me that stuck with me while I was pregnant was, it's not called labour for no reason. It's hard work in
Right.
most cases anyway.
Yes.
I do know the odd person
Yeah.
who's had a very straightforward, pretty easy, fast labour. But yeah, it's something that requires a lot of endurance, both physically and mentally, doesn't it? So is that
Yes.
one of the things you find women come to you with in mind, that they want to help themselves, be able to be prepared much better for?
Yeah, definitely. And I actually, first and second trimester, we don't change, we start to change a few things, but they're able to do a lot of what they're used to. But third trimester, we do start kind of pulling back on the intensity of their workouts and really preparing their bodies for labor. Like a pregnant client I just had recently, she just had her baby last month. Like we planned circuits for her to do in labor with movements that she was familiar with from working out. So a lot of that stuff like crosses over, not like workout circuits necessarily, but like movements like deep squats and doing things on a big exercise ball. So things that she practiced in pregnancy during workouts that she could translate over into her labor. So yeah, I definitely have clients that want to work on endurance and prepping their bodies for delivery. Because you're right, it's quite the event on the body.
Yeah, it is. And I think one of the things I've noticed is making a difference with the awareness and people, continuing to exercise and move while they're pregnant is the role models who were talking and showing this in their own lives. I used to work for Nike, and we brought in a maternity range not that long ago, actually. I can't remember if it was kind of 2-3 years ago. It was very recent. They introduced that range, which was a brilliant move forward to show that when you are pregnant and carrying a child, you can still wear workout clothes because you can still work out. And there's obviously a lot of athletes who have been very open about training whilst pregnant. So do you think that's something that's going to help to build, the awareness and continuation during pregnancy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's why I love doing things like this, like talking with you about it in a podcast setting, because sometimes women just don't know. They don't know that exercising consistently is an option. Like I said, there's so much conflicting information. So the more visibility that we can get exercise during pregnancy out into the world, I mean, every woman should be doing it, barring contraindications, of course. But it's so good for both you and the baby that, any visibility we can get is great.
Yeah. So let's talk about post-pregnancy then, because I'm guessing that that's one of the biggest challenging times of a woman's life if she has gone through a pregnancy and delivered a baby. So what do you see women coming to you with at that point? And you mentioned, someone who might come to you with a child who's 7. Do you see a pattern as to when women realise the need to do something post-pregnancy?
Yeah, and actually, the majority of my clients are post-pregnancy. I would say maybe 25% of them are pregnant when they come to
Right.
me. Most of them have already had their baby. Um, the most common thing that I see is the mommy tummy. They haven't been able to get rid of their tummy after having a baby, or just general weight loss. They've really struggled to lose weight after having the baby. They feel tired all the time. They can't play with their kids. That was one of my current clients. One of her goals didn't have anything to do with weight. It was just like, I want to be able to play with my kid without being exhausted, like, or running out of
Yeah.
breath. But I would say the mommy tummy, mommy pooch however you want to call it, is the most common thing that women come to me with.
Right. And do you find that that is sometime after pregnancy, or are women generally quite eager to work on that pretty soon after?
I see both. But I would say most of them, their children are into school by the time they seek me out, because it's not until their kids are in school that they feel like they have time or money to hire someone to help them with their fitness journey. So I do have some that are pretty early postpartum, but I would say most of them, their kids are school age by the time they find me.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because a lot of the women who I work with and have in my community are stuck where they are because they believe they don't have time, and so they can't change anything. And that's something which, not just when we talk about our kind of topics in health and wellness, but in lots of things people might want to do differently in their life, they tend to stay where they are because they believe they're just too busy, they don't have time. So how do you help them to
Yeah.
overcome that objective?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many things. If somebody comes to me that doesn't become a client, I like to give them two things to work on, just to give them somewhere to go. They might come back to me eventually, but all moms, I recommend working on breathing. We tend to chest breathe or shoulder breathe, right? And so that doesn't give our pelvic floor a chance to work with our diaphragm. So always talk about releasing your belly. As women, we tend to suck our bellies in because we want them to look smaller. But what ends up happening is those upper abs are actually what's pulling in, and the lower abs aren't engaging at all. And then it disrupts your breathing pattern. It causes all kinds of pelvic floor issues. So that's the first thing I have them start paying attention to their breathing, letting their belly go, let it all hang out. That's what I say. Just relax your belly, let yourself breathe. And the second thing that I have them pay attention to is their posture, because often in pregnancy, if this is what normal posture looks like, and these are your hips down here, we tend to tuck our hips under to support the pregnant belly, right? So your hips come really far forward. You get kind of like the heart bottom syndrome, right? Like you have flat pancake butt. So we get a flat butt, our shoulders get all rolled forward because we're breastfeeding or bottle feeding, we're sitting in this position a lot, but then that translates to standing. So we kind of end up like little turtles. And that also disrupts our breathing pattern and our pelvic floor function. So no one has perfect posture all the time. I don't, nobody does. But if we can pay attention and be mindful of our posture, we can adjust it throughout the day. Anytime if you're standing at the counter making dinner and you notice that you're slouching and your hips are really tucked under, just fix it and stand up straight. Give your body a chance to stand properly and get that good breathing pattern. Let your pelvic floor do the work that it's supposed to. And then the third thing, if clients do work with me, strength training is vital for any woman, really. After the age of 35 into our 40s, we start to lose 5 to 8% muscle mass every decade. So if you're not rebuilding that muscle, you're going to keep getting weaker and weaker and having more and more problems. So we want to make sure that we're lifting weights to maintain that muscle mass as we age.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I wanted to chat about the strength training because that's something which a lot of women are fearful of. And I can imagine, you know, if you haven't done it previously, once you've had a baby and, you know, for a lot of women where things have changed physically, it can be really daunting to think about lifting weights. And going back to the time issue, people think that weights mean having to go to a gym and having to, you know, be lifting heavy in front of other people and maybe being there for an hour, and they don't have that time to drive to the gym, get changed, do the hour, shower, etc. So yeah, I know that that isn't how it needs to be in reality, and the power of strength training is incredible. And yeah, just chat to us a little bit about that. And the other thing I would like you to touch on, because you mentioned, you know, the mum tums are the big problem a lot of people have. Strength training with weights, especially, but any kind of resistance, is now being proven to be as, if not more effective for weight loss than cardio training, isn't it?
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And you made a great point at the end that strength training doesn't have to be with dumbbells or barbells in a big setting. Any kind of resistance training, your body can be resistance, right? If you're squatting, your body's resisting gravity. If you're doing push-ups, your body's resisting gravity. So your body counts, but things like bands, and other like apparati you can use, or just dumbbells at home. I have clients that have like a 5 pound, I don't know if you guys use pounds over there, probably not.
Weigh kilograms, yeah.
Just
I think that's about that's probably
okay.
about 2.5 kilograms, maybe.
Yeah, so like a couple sets of dumbbells at home, and that's what they use, and they're fine.
Yeah,
Most of my clients, I have them do workouts that are 20 to 30 minutes tops, and they're done. So it's really accessible. It feels intimidating and scary at first, but you definitely don't have to go into a gym to get in strength training or resistance training. You can do it right at home. But you're right that strength training is more effective for weight loss because it builds muscle. Muscles, the more muscle mass you have, that's what helps your metabolism, right? Which is how quickly you burn calories in your body. So if you're doing excessive amounts of cardio, eventually your body runs out of fat to feed on and it starts feeding on your muscles and you lose muscle mass. So we don't want to only do cardio. That's not the best way to actually lose weight. It's through strength training and building your muscles to increase your metabolism. And that's actually a much more effective way to lose weight than cardio. You're right.
yeah. And I think a lot of women, well, people full stop, are put off doing exercise because they think it's going to be, running on a treadmill or sweating it out on a bike or a rower, and that you have to be on there, for 20 minutes. Or even longer in some cases, and the thought of it is just so painful, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
weight training, like strength training, well, I'll not call it weight training, strength training, resistance of any kind, is so varied. You can make it so different. As you said, you can carve it up into much smaller chunks. You can find really, interesting, fun ways to do it. I've got a slam
Yeah.
ball. There's nothing better than
Oh,
getting that
yes.
ball in
Those
the
are
air
so
and
fun.
slamming it down with lots of
Yeah.
aggression and adrenaline and
Yes.
so on. Yeah, the bands are brilliant, especially when we're talking here about a lot of women who might still have quite young children. They're things that you could do at home, even, with free YouTube content in your lounge, living room with the kids around and so on. And so, yeah, there's so many different ways to do that. And do you find that once they get into it and realise what it's like, that they actually enjoy it and do really
yeah.
look forward to it? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Once they feel that, because exercise releases those happy hormones into your body, right? So, once they've experienced that on a consistent basis, it's definitely something they want to pursue because they feel the physical benefits and the mental benefits as well. So and like I said at the very beginning, I always try to incorporate something that they do like. Um, so I have some clients that have a yoga background. So I try to include some more yoga style things into their strength training so that it's something they're comfortable with. It's something that they like, but I'm also challenging them by having them move their bodies in ways that maybe they aren't used to in yoga that can strengthen them in a different way. So you don't have to do something. Like me, for instance, I hate running. I hate it. I think I do it like, maybe once a week, but sometimes I want to do a different kind of cardio. So I'll row or bike or something like that. Like if running was the only option for me, I would not be a personal trainer because I hate it so much. But like you said, the nice thing about fitness is there's so many different ways to do things. Find something that you like, stick with it, and you're going to see results.
Yeah, and I encourage that as well. I talk about finding something that you're going to enjoy because I want people to build sustainable, healthy habits, ones that become part of who you are and your routine and they just flow in your life. And that happens when you really align to them. And in the case of exercise, when you really get enjoyment from it. And I think the key is as well to keep varying it, to progress. That's what we need to do when we talk about strength training, isn't it? Is to always progress.
Yeah.
So if you were just constantly doing bicep curls with the same weight, that's great, but you're not really going to get the benefits from it. And as women, because of what we
Right.
need to protect with our bones as we age and hit the menopausal stage of our life, we've really got to make sure that we are varying and progressing the strength training that we do. So the example you gave of yoga is a brilliant strength training way to work out, but you do need to keep progressing it, and so adding in weights if that's something you've never done before is an example of how you can progress there.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that all sounds great. I want to talk now about pelvic floor. You've touched on it a few times, and it's a really important topic that I have a personal story about, and I'm very passionate about the fact that females aren't taught about their pelvic floor. Usually,
I know, it's crazy.
2 stages of life, I think, until you become pregnant, and at an much older age, when for many women it becomes a serious issue in their health. Because of my story, I learned a lot about what it actually does. So yeah, tell us about that, because I think it's something that scares a lot of women. And if you do have a problem with it, especially post-pregnancy, it can be something you just think you've got to put up with.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I was definitely in that category too. Like, I knew nothing about the pelvic floor until I got into this field. And I've had my own pelvic floor issues, and I haven't had kids. The interesting thing about the pelvic floor is a lot of women tend to hold stress or trauma in their pelvic floor. So that can create issues, even if you've never had a baby. Like, for instance, female gymnasts tend to have really tight pelvic floors. They have incontinence issues just because of the type of activity they're constantly doing. So this isn't limited to just women who've had babies. Like, anybody can have pelvic floor issues. And so the pelvic floor, I like to talk of it as like a little hammock for your bladder, your vagina, and your rectum. So it supports those organs. And you can have, like you said, a lot of women tend to associate the pelvic floor with the bladder. So having incontinence is a really common issue postpartum, because that pelvic floor has supported the baby for 9 months. And a lot of women, whether you have a C-section or a vaginal birth, but particularly during a vaginal birth, there can be tearing or trauma to the pelvic floor, causing weakness, causing some dysfunction, which leads to incontinence. So unfortunately, at least in the US, a lot of times an OB or a gynecologist, the doctors that help deliver the baby, their specialty is not pelvic floor. So often what they'll tell you is the only way for you to fix incontinence is through having surgery. And as a PT, you know that that's not true. There's so much that you can do to reconnect to your pelvic floor, because lots of times that's what I've found with my moms. They've lost that connection to their core and to their pelvic floor. So reestablishing that connection through things like good breathing and good posture helps you figure out, oh, okay, there's my pelvic floor. Now I can feel it. So we work on strengthening the pelvic floor through things like Kegels, but also learning how to relax it, because that's just as important, especially if you're someone like me. I had a really tight pelvic floor, so I had incontinence issues because I was holding trauma there. So my pelvic floor was like this all the time. So I had to learn how to let it relax. So being able to relax your pelvic floor is just as important as strengthening it. So that's the biggest issue I see pelvic floor wise, is incontinence, but also prolapse. And I don't know if you want me to get into that too much, but that's just when there's a descent of an organ into the vaginal canal, essentially, like into the walls of the vagina. Or you can have a rectocele prolapse. There's different kinds. But that's generally also a weakness of the pelvic floor. Pelvic floor training can help, but also things like pessaries to help provide a little bit of support can help in those situations too.
Yeah, and there are so many different things that you can do, both from a physical perspective and mental perspective, as you said, to reconnect with your pelvic floor. In my case, I had a very damaged pelvic floor because of trauma during delivery. And after many attempts at different solutions like surgery and using a TENS machine and different things, I did have surgery, and that was about 8 or 9 years ago now. And the surgery that I had is actually pretty much banned now, definitely in the US, I know, and here in the UK, because of the risks associated with what can happen many years after the surgery. For me, I must admit, it was life-changing, because I had a lot of issues because of how weak my pelvic floor was, and the incontinence that I had as a consequence of that. And I really, feel and empathise with women struggling with that, because the mental side of that is extreme. It can be very, very impactful to you. So, if that is something that you are dealing with and you're hearing us talk about, there are now so many different ways that you can work on improving that. It doesn't have to be like that, and you don't have to live a life where you are wearing incontinence pads or pants, or feeling embarrassed and ashamed of what's going on. It's something that you can definitely help. And if you are listening and you haven't had those troubles, then you do need to make sure that you are working on your strength and physical fitness, because again, as women, many of us hit this for the first time when we are post-menopause, because again of the changes that are happening with our hormones and bodies. So it's really important. And something I learned as well was that men have a pelvic floor. I was astounded. I thought it was just women, because again, what we're not educated on, we think it's just there to hold our bladder and bowel, and and I learned that men have it, and regardless of whether you are someone who's going to or has had a child and what gender you are, that pelvic floor is literally like the core essential of having a strong, healthy body, isn't it? A lot of athletes, both male and female, and I know this from my Nike days, work on building a really strong pelvic floor, because whether you're a runner, a tennis player, a swimmer, that really helps to, support every other muscle in your body, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like a foundation, especially for the rest of your organs and your core, all of that. It's very important. And like you said, so many women struggle with this issue, but it tends to still be a taboo topic. Like, they're embarrassed to say that they struggle with this, or that it's a problem. So it's so valuable that you're talking about this and presenting it on a podcast like this, because women need to know that, first of all, they're not alone. It's a really common issue, but just because it's common, like you said, it doesn't mean it's normal. Their body isn't meant to function like that for the rest of their lives. And there's so much help out there for them, and they don't have to be like this forever. So I'm so thankful that there's people like you who are spreading the good news.
Yeah, it's something that I was completely embarrassed about. And I honestly didn't talk about it at all until I became a health coach, because I was ashamed. I felt as though it meant there was something wrong with me, and the way it impacted me mentally meant that, I just hid away from chatting about it because of how it used to make me feel. And I have fortunately met a couple of really incredible women who focus only on pelvic floor, and one of them is coming on the podcast in the future to chat about it, and I've done some collaboration work with her before, because I'm really passionate about it, because my daughter's, as I said, 15 almost, and she doesn't know about that. I didn't know about it at her age, and we really do need to educate everyone, not just females, because everyone has this core muscle that's such an integral part of how their body works for the rest of their life. It needs to be strong and supportive. So I think we all have to keep opening up on the topic, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So if someone's listening and, regardless of what stage of their life they're at, and really struggling with building an exercise habit, we're telling them, this is a real important fundamental part of building a healthy, happier lifestyle. What would you say they could do in the next day or two? I'm all about getting started straight away to begin building a habit. What advice would you give them to get going with something simple?
I would say Something you mentioned earlier is that there's so many free resources on YouTube. So if you can find a 10-minute video to follow along, do 10 minutes. That's on days that I don't want to work out. One of my favorite tips is I'll set a timer for 10 minutes and do something and be like, if I do 10 minutes, that's better than nothing. But most of the time, it gets to 10 minutes and I'm like, oh, this is great. I'll go for 10 more, 20 more minutes, and you feel great afterwards. So find something tomorrow, somebody that you like on YouTube that you can follow a 10 or 20-minute video. We don't want to go crazy, right? We don't want to do an hour-long workout where you can't walk the next day. So we want to ease into it, find a video of something that you enjoy, do that same video 3 times this week, and see how much better you feel at the end of the week.
Yeah, that's good advice. And there's so many different ways to begin exercising for free, isn't there? That's the key thing, is it's accessible and you can find, as we said, something that you enjoy that fits with your schedule, the time restrictions. If you don't have any equipment, that doesn't matter. You can do it in your bare feet. You know, even getting outside and going for a walk is a great free way to begin an exercise routine. So yeah, brilliant advice. Thanks, Brittany. So I just have a little kind of quiz to wrap up to see which of these you would prefer when we talk about healthy habits.
Okay.
So I think you've given something away maybe as we were chatting on whether you'd prefer to walk or run.
Oh, definitely walk. I have 2 dogs and I walk them every day and I love it. I love to be outside, but not running.
Brilliant. And what about water or juice?
Ooh, probably water.
Yeah. And fruit or veg?
Vegetables.
Yeah. And
Yep.
if you had to pick between a morning or an evening routine?
Morning. I have turned into a morning person. I used to be a night owl, and doing personal training forced me to get up early, and now I love it. I love getting a lot done before everybody else is awake.
That's good to know. Yeah, that it can be changed. You can, switch that around. And then what about meditating versus journaling?
That's a good one. I would say meditating. I get frustrated by having to write because my hand can't keep up with my brain. So meditating is a little bit more accessible for me.
Yeah, I know I find journaling hard just because I'm so, untrained on using a pen now that I find my hand literally aches within about 30 seconds of picking the pen up and putting it to the paper. Yeah. So just to let everyone know then where they can find you, Brittany, if you want to share where you like to hang out and how they can get in touch.
Sure. Yeah, most of my content is on Instagram. It's my business name, which is Mom Gets Moxie, Moxie. Moxie is kind of an unfamiliar word, but it just means like a strength of character and confidence. It's how I want moms to feel. I want them to feel empowered. So that's my business name. You can find me on Instagram at Mom Gets Moxie, on Facebook at Mom Gets Moxie, and also my website. So sending me a message on either Instagram or Facebook, or going to my website, there's an option to send me an email there. So yeah, that's most of what I do is on Instagram. I do lives and all kinds of stuff on there. But you can find me at all 3 places.
Fab, and I'll pop them into the show notes. And you had a little something to offer as well if anyone was interested in finding out about working with you.
Oh yeah, the 10% off. Yeah, so if you are listening here and you check out Instagram or a website and you are interested in doing some training, if you just mentioned to me that you found me here on the podcast, then I'll give you 10% off on your services.
Oh, that's so generous. Thank you. No excuse if you're listening.
Of course. Right, no excuses.
Yeah, it's been lovely to chat, Brittany, and I really hope that, anyone listening has resonated with it, and if they have been struggling to get moving, they can see a way to begin and how it's going to improve their life. And definitely for anyone who might be thinking about pregnancy, to start now. That's the message, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yep. It's never too late.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you. This has been fun.